wonderfully talented professionals to take his spot. So I think it's even going to be a better show tonight. Just don't tell Russell I said that. So I am Ashley Gentry, the host of Real Talk, where we put the real in real estate. And I've got Nancy Garcia, who is our current TreePack state chairperson. And for those of you that are on here right now and are going, what the heck is TreePack? One, we love our acronyms in real estate, but it's a really important one. So we're going to let Nancy talk about that here just in a minute. I also have Amy Karns Hanson. You are recently married, so we've got a new addition to your name title and a proud one. And Amy's a rock star property manager and owns her own property management firm, A+ Property Management. Amy, thank you for jumping on tonight on such short notice. And Julia, is it Parenteau?
Parenteau.
I didn't even ask. And my maiden name is Parentino, and it has been butchered my entire life. So I apologize. But you are the yes, absolutely. You are the esteemed director of public policy for Texas Realtors. So I think we've got a great slate tonight. So Nancy, let's talk about TreePack first, because we're really going to dig into public policy, what the market's been doing, all of those other things in regards to especially property management, which is why we have Amy on tonight. But tell us what TreePack does first and why you have such a passion to champion it.
Oh my goodness. Thank you. TreePack is the TreePack, Texas Realtor Political Action Party. So what we do is we fund or we contribute to candidates that take care of our issues, that champion our issues, which are real estate issues. So we have a lot of public policies that we do as realtors, the HOA, the, taxes, things like that. So that's kind of what we champion. And gosh, why do I like TreePack? I have a house. My kids have houses. So what I want to do is make sure that our rights as property owners are protected. And then also that kind of goes down to our profession. I'm a realtor. We all are realtors. So we want to protect our profession. We want to make sure that we are not taxed out of the kazoo, that we're not fined incorrectly. We're not, we have a job to do, and we want to make sure that we are advocates for our own clients, which become our friends, which become our families. So that's kind of my passion on that. My family, my grandparents were immigrants, so they were always, telling us home ownership, the American dream is so important, that was ingrained in our heads, and in our hearts, actually. Then they were like advocating for their neighborhood and then making sure their whole community had homes. So it was just a natural progression. And a TreePack is just kind of, it fits the bill. So that's exactly why I'm passionate about that, Ashley.
Well, Nancy, those are great reasons. Amy, let's go as to one, talk about how long you've been in property management for just a second, but then I want you to relate it back to why you think TreePack's important for your line of business, because you work with landlords and tenants every day.
Absolutely. I've been doing property management now for a little over 20 years, and our investors, our landlords, and our tenants are all impacted by these changes that take place in the legislature. And we need to make sure that we're in touch with that. And we know what's happening with new bills coming out, what's being passed, what's being changed. And so helping to support TreePack gets us a seat at the table. It's huge for our investors. There are so many private property rights that are on the table, some that we've championed and have passed in the past couple of years. We've got a long way to go. There's so much out there that we can tackle as long as we all get together and support TreePack together.
Well, and I think that's the key right there. I think so many times we talk about, it from the homeownership standpoint and living in the property as your primary residence, but there's also a really large impact here. And I don't know what happened. I get it. Just like not all realtors are created equal, not all landlords are created equal. There are some bad ones, but we surely do demonize our landlords, which are offering housing when we realize that housing is the most important thing, especially over the past couple of years, they're offering much needed housing. I mean, our demand is out of this world for rental properties in North Texas, but yet we demonize landlords for needing to make a profit, needing to cover their expenses, and being able to actually provide that utility. So chime in just for a second for that on me. What are you seeing in regard something that's impacting the landlords that maybe is not the normal clickbait or headline that we see?
Absolutely. There's such a demand for rental properties right now. When the sales market went nuts and crazy and we had such a lack of supply, a lot of the people that wanted to buy couldn't. So they went in and they said, hey, let me rent a house for a year while the market settles down, or we figure out what we're doing. Or maybe they want to build a house. Oh, it's going to take 12 months to build a house. So let me go get into a rental property. And that has really pushed the demand up for rentals. And we have people, we've gotten into multiple offer situations on rentals. It's the craziest thing I've seen in 20 years. But the landlords have really taken a hit the last couple of years. Like you said, there's a lot of demonizing going along. These people, most of the landlords that are out there are mom and pop landlords. They have one or two houses. They're looking to be able to cover their mortgage, cover their expenses, and provide a retirement for themselves or their children in the future. And the eviction moratoriums that have come down, the private property right challenges that we've had with homeowners associations, and the property taxes going up just incredibly has made it where a number of landlords have said, is it really worth it to be a landlord anymore? Maybe I should take advantage of the sales market and put my house on the market and sell it, which has made the rental market even crazier because now we have even less inventory on the rental market side. So it has definitely been a challenge. And of course, all of that rolls down to the tenant, the resident that's living in that property. When property taxes go up, when eviction moratoriums don't allow for landlords to collect rent, all of those risks that are inherent in being a landlord go up. And in order to offset some of that risk, rental rates have to go up. And so at the end of the day, the price point on these rentals, in a normal year, we see a 2 to 3% increase in rents. This year, I've seen 10, 15, 20% increases on rents. I mean, in a normal market, could anyone afford their house payment to go up, their rental payment to go up? 20%? It's huge. And then where do these people go to find housing then? It's a huge issue across the rental spectrum.
Well, and then you're talking about something else that we obviously do have an impact on, and that's property taxes. And because everything is appreciating at such a great rate, unfortunately, tenants don't realize that also means the taxes go up. And unfortunately, we do have some higher tax rates in Texas because we don't have other taxes like other states. So I think that's where it's happening so much is double-digit appreciation, and everybody wants their piece of the pie, which and then unfortunately means it's passed off to the tenant. And so I think that sometimes when we're approaching legislation, and Julia, this is obviously something that you can speak of as far as a Texas Realtors public policy issue, is the taxes. And that impacts so many of us. And people sometimes think that only impacts you if you're a homeowner. Absolutely impacts you as a tenant as well. And that's something that as Texas Realtors and as TreePack, we are constantly trying to figure out a way to combat. So from the public policy side, and I told you I didn't want you to give me your PR speech on all of these things, but I know you're going to. Why do we fight against this? What are we trying to accomplish, and what's our position from the Texas Realtor standpoint?
On property taxes, generally speaking.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. Well, first of all, let me add to your list of Texas Realtors, TreePack, also the Metro Texas Association, and all of our other local partners around the state are really significant stakeholders in that conversation, because I think everyone here who's listening knows this, but we might have some new folks, so it bears saying. Texas, as a state, does not charge property taxes. And so property taxes are only charged at the local level here in Texas. So our cities, our counties, school districts, and probably a whole host of other special taxing districts. And we can talk about that if you want to, but it gets pretty nerdy pretty fast. But all of those local entities are the ones that are actually ultimately setting your tax bill. So the state legislature is in a very strange position where they have the ability to set laws around the structure of how property taxes are set up and how the local taxing entities can do their work, and along with the central appraisal districts, but they don't actually get to say what your property taxes are. And so that sets up this complex push-pull thing, and it's why it's so important that realtors are really active, not only in Austin, but at the local level with your cities and counties as well. And so all of that to say that Texas Realtors' position on property taxes, and this is not a direct quote, I'm going to recite this kind of in my own words. We want to make sure that property owners and residents, I think you make a great point bringing up the tenant side, that people who are impacted by property taxes have a clear understanding of how that bill is set, that they have a relatively easy ability to go and have an impact on their ultimate tax levy. And really what that means, it's complicated right now, but it means being able to go to your city council, being able to go to your county commission and talk to them about what the budgets are that they're setting for each year, because that's where your tax bill comes from. So we have been working for years to make sure that people have a better understanding of that process and can be active participants, not just stopping at going to the central appraisal district and protesting your appraised value, not protesting your taxes. Let's all be very clear about that rhetoric. You're protesting your appraised value. The CAD doesn't set your tax bill. We don't want you to stop there. We want you to keep going. And for the tenants, I think that we have a lot more work to do to really make them understand that they too are impacted by property tax increases. I live in Austin. When I first moved to town, I was a renter. I still am, actually. We can talk about the Austin market later.
We don't have enough time, Julia.
But I just actually renewed my lease, and I read the whole thing because who I am as a person. And God bless my landlord. They had a big all caps note. It was maybe on page 8, but it was in there that says, if property taxes go up, your rent will go up.
Wow.
And I really appreciated them for that. I know that, but I don't know that a lot of other tenants do. And so that's the kind of transparency that I think is really important to get out there into the world. And that's something that Texas Realtors will keep working on with the legislature.
Well, and I think that's super important. I'm going to talk to Francie for just a second, because she said we're really dressed up on snow day, and thanks for volunteering and sharing your time today. Francie, I've got 2 pairs of socks on because where I'm sitting is very cold because it's a wall of windows, and slippers. So, and I've also got stretchy pants on and a t-shirt. So I basically put a blazer on over my pajamas. So we're gonna throw that out there just a little bit. But guys, this is Real Talk, and it is open to the public. And I am not going to put you guys in a position to do anything or say anything that you're not comfortable with. But we do have a few things that have popped into the chat, and you are welcome to give your opinion or abstain. But I've said before, we won't glaze over. And I will do the same here. Nancy, you are TreePack chairman, which is primarily fundraising, correct?
Correct.
So, in regards to somebody has chimed in and asked where we stand on the employer vaccine mandates. And that's something that obviously is swirling around. There's a lot of question about that. And the question is, did TreePack lobby against a ban on employer vaccine mandates in this 3rd special session? And do we support mandated vaccines or testing for realtors?
Okay. TreePack is not an employer, so that's not one of our issues. We really, our policies and the issues that we fight are for real estate and private property rights. I think maybe the question was part of Texas Realtors. Maybe that's where that should, maybe that's where they're thinking that we're all part of it, but we are really just a committee of volunteers. We're all we're a mixture of volunteers and then Texas Realtor, employees. But that's not one of our issues that we have that we fight with. But Julia, you might be able to answer or go pivot on this one here.
Yeah, for sure. And thank you for that, Nancy. I think it's important to draw a distinction on, the kinds of issues that TreePack will talk about, and as an association, Texas Realtors, what we might get asked to comment on when the legislature is meeting. The question on vaccine mandates, Texas Realtors has not supported an employer vaccine mandate, not for our people nor for legislative purposes. But generally, what I would say is that the position that Texas Realtors has adopted in that space is that we oppose overreaching government intervention into telling businesses how they can run, period. So if, and that is something that I think really keeps in line with the tradition that Texas has had of being a really business friendly state. It's why we are so successful economically, and why businesses continue to this day to want to relocate here or start here in droves. And that's because the government's not like in their business telling them what to do all the time. So I think it is, Christy asked the question about the third special session. There was legislation that would have prohibited employers from requiring that their employees be vaccinated. And similarly, to us, to other members of the business community who do advocacy work in Texas, that also felt like an overreach of the Texas government to be able to tell employers what they can and cannot require. So we didn't want the government to say one way or another. That was the position we held.
Well, Amy, we've definitely gone sideways because I told you this was going to be all about you and taking public policy with property management. We are going to get to that, but Johnny, he did put a good comment in there that, TreePack stuff is complex. For a comprehensive stance or info. Reach out to info@texasrealtors.com to ask more questions about that. And like Sherry said, TreePack is to protect private property rights and home ownership, and that is the primary focus. So thank you, Sherry, for chiming in on that. Okay, well, it's going to be a night, guys. So here we are, and it was circled back. So there is a question to it, and I don't have the ability to delete or erase. So we're gonna have to comment on this one as well. Texas Realtors is requiring a vaccine passport for their winter conference. If you don't have proof of vaccination, you must provide a negative COVID test. When the vaccinated are both able to contract and spread the virus, why is testing only required of the unvaccinated? And are we still mandating masks at the conference? So Amy, and this is not property management, so you're out. Okay. And, between Nancy or Julia, would either one of you like to, really, Nancy, obviously this is out of your purview. This isn't something that you signed off on. But Julia, being director of public policy and dealing with government affairs and everything is governmental now, can you give us some info on what that comment is about?
Yeah, and what I would say is anybody who is considering attending our Texas Realtors winter meetings that wants to ask in-depth questions about that, we can provide some points of contact on the staff level. But we, in the interest of mitigating the spread of COVID-19, which rates have been very high here in Austin, especially, but also some of the other areas around the state. We are subject to some additional protocols just because Austin is in stage 5. Thankfully, we have not had to postpone or cancel the event. We're really excited about actually having everyone live and in person. It makes these are great, but it does make a difference in that conference setting when you can actually all be in the same place. So we're really grateful that the event is going forward. But because Austin is in stage 5, the masking requirements will be in place at this time. The And as far as the specific questions on vaccination versus COVID testing, I would like to direct y'all to another person on our staff, and I can get some contact information and have it. Maybe we can share that in the chat.
I think it'd be great. So, and we can pop that in the chat after this live feed, and we are live. So that's what's going on here. And I've told you it's real talk, and it's sometimes uncomfortable talk, but I appreciate you guys, staying with me here and commenting on those. So, Johnny, he's always got nuggets for us here. Texas Realtors is committed to the safety of our members, staff, and volunteers. Feedback is always welcome and encouraged. Again, I'd suggest you reaching out to info@texasrealtors.com for additional questions, clarifications, and to provide feedback. Thank you, Johnny, who is a consummate volunteer as well. So we've got Tammy, who has popped in here and said, is basically just asking, why would we take, a stand with this for our conference? Anyone can choose to mass vax or wear a hazmat suit, but no one should be forced. We don't have a mandate. We're not going to do a mandate. And I think some of this is swirling around because we do have the protocol for winter conference. NAR actually did just put out, I think it was, I saw the headline of an article and it was talking about our, proof of vaccination going to be required for showings and working with clients and what that would look like. And look, we're all, we don't know. I don't know. I mean, again, I'm wearing slippers sitting behind my desk right now. This world is very different than it used to be. And so I think everybody's just grasping and trying to figure out what this is going to look like down the road. And again, all three of you ladies are not the aforementioned experts on all of this. So I would just say, again, let's reach out to Texas Realtors. Should you have any questions, Johnny put in their info at texasrealtors.com. Julia, you have contact information for me?
Yes, and I was just checking. Apologize for being on my phone, but I want to give you the most direct information. Our whole meeting and planning folks who are handling all of these questions can be reached as a group at registrations@texasrealtors.com.
Okay.
So I would recommend hitting them up there.
Okay. Well, sounds good. And then I told you guys you could drink on the show, and I am for that reason. Nancy's a smart lady too. Johnny, switching gears. This is for you, Amy.
Okay.
Have you noticed any new trends in the North Texas region? I'm gonna actually give a little bit more context to that. You did also talk about the increase in rental rates, year after year with renewals. But what about what's going on with HOA Overreach? Because we can all speak on that, whether it's property managed wise or just being a homeowner. So what are you noticing with that?
Oh, I got a total surprise a couple of weeks ago. I had an agent refer a client over that they had already closed on the transaction, and they wanted to put the house on the market for property management. I was like, oh, thank goodness, we need more inventory for rentals. So I pop on over there and put my sign in the yard, and about 2 hours later, I get a call from the HOA. We see your sign in the front yard of this house over here. It was actually in Allen, Texas, and I said, oh, okay, well, great. Do you want to lease it? He goes, no, I'm in charge of the HOA. We don't allow rentals after we already have our max of rental properties. And I said, well, what do they do? He's, I don't know, but you can't rent the property. That is a huge problem for this investor that just bought this house. So what we're seeing now is a lot of HOAs have got a lot of overreach into rentals. Texas legislature just passed the Senate Bill 1588, which is a huge HOA bill. A lot of good changes in that. There was a lot of overreach into HOAs wanting to screen our applicants, have all the contact information, including date of birth, social security number, driver's license, all of the identifying information that really, should be within a privacy policy of a property management company. But the other issue that we're seeing on the ability to rent your property, a lot of HOAs have put into their bylaws and their CC&Rs that they have a limit. You can only have 10% of the total units of properties, either houses, condos, townhomes, whatever. This applies to all types of real estate. only 10% can be rentals, or only 20% can be rentals. And it's like, that's a tough one. And if you actually get a house in a homeowners association that has one of these limits, you can have a situation that we experienced last week, that the house has been rented for years. And as long as they renewed, no problems. But as soon as we had to put a new tenant in it, they were over their limit of 20%. We had to go to the bottom of the list. We could not rent the property at all. The landlord has an asset they cannot rent. That is a huge private property issue. And we've been working with the government affairs group to kind of roll this up to Texas Realtors so they can work on it. I can tell you one of my favorite things about TreePack is there is somebody looking at 4,000 bills that come out from the legislature, and they say, okay, there's 4,000, which is completely overwhelming, and I would not want to have to read all that. They say, hey, here's 30 that apply to realtors in Texas, and this could be commercial, farm and ranch, housing, condos, townhomes, whatever. So that's one of the things I love about TreePack is I can be involved without having to read 4,000 different bills and see what the different issues are and what's the pros and cons of those specific, say, 30 bills or whatever. But the HOAs have gotten a little crazy, and it's an issue. It's an issue for our sales agents, our realtors that are out there trying to sell to investors. It's an issue for our property managers. It's an issue for tenants, because if we can't have investors buy properties, we won't have rental properties. Our inventory is going to plummet even more than it already is. So,
well, and again, that goes back to demonizing landlords. Everybody wants to sit there and say, oh, the big evil landlord that's sitting there and trying to profit on the weak. And that's not the case. People need rental properties, or else there wouldn't be, like you said, multiple offers on rental applications right now. And so, like Richard, and I get what Richard's coming from, but Richard, this is where it's a new problem, because he said if the buyer's agent didn't know a property could not be leased, I would say that agent lacked geographic competency. But what Amy is saying, it's changing faster than we can keep up with it. And so I have seen that, because I've got first-time home buyers in the $300,000 to $400,000 range, which is also the primary bread and butter for most of the investors acquiring the properties right now. And we're seeing properties go back on the market because they'll say in private marks, no fault to the seller or the home, but unfortunately it was an investor. And we found out once we got the HOA certificate, the resale certificate, that rentals were no longer allowed, or it was beyond the percentage. Here's a side note. I will say where this benefited me one time. Okay. I did get the first time home buyers, and we wrote our first offer, and the guy said, we've had multiple cash offers for investors, but because Heartland requires you to reside in the community for a minimum of 12 months prior to converting it to a rental property, we had to say no. My clients got it undervalue, not at list price, FHA financing, seller pay title policy, and a home warranty, and it's only 3 years old. So
I think you found a unicorn.
Yeah, I did find a unicorn. Yes. But it's so in that one instance, I was like, heck yeah, thank you, Heartland, for having that implicate. But I also work with 30% of my clientele is investors, and we're trying to find good quality product to be able to acquire and then rent out. And so, that's really difficult. When I am scouring to find good acquisitions, I'm having to see, okay, can I find another listing that maybe had it in private remarks? Because Richard, going back to professional competency, now that we know that this is an issue, we all need to be aware of this, especially if we work with investors. So on the, Julia, I'm going to come back to you and give you something else, but on HOAs. We just had a big legislative win with our HOA reform, transparency, different things like that. Can you touch on what that was and how we obviously need to continue to, compound that and increase it even further?
Yes. Okay. First of all, Amy, you're my hero for knowing the bill number of that legislation. Thank you. That Good job. So Senate Bill 1588 was a lengthy piece of legislation. I think it wound up being 17 pages long. It's not like appropriations state budget long, but a lot of other bills are like 2 or 3 pages. So 17 pages is a lot. And it incorporated a whole bunch of things. But the ultimate goal that we had in working with legislators about that piece of policy was really to get the conversation started about homeowners associations in Texas, which I should say is a catch-all term that's not actually anywhere in the law. They're either referred to as property owners associations or condo associations. Not all property owners associations are condo associations, but all condo associations are property owner associations. So it gets really wonky in the law. And then, don't even get me started on our friends down in Harris and Montgomery County who have this whole other separate statute because of the way that they don't use zoning down there. Very complicated. But the idea was, like I said, to start the conversation. We have heard for a really long time from members all over the state that HOAs are causing some trouble, whether it's in the transaction or, as Amy's talking about, when you are there as a property owner trying to do something, whether that's rent your property or remodel it or put up decorations, whatever that might be. So we were really surprised, if I'm being honest, about the legislative interest we had in that bill this year. A lot of legislators, we'd go into their offices, and whether they or their staff, they would say, "Oh, let me tell you this story that I had to deal with in an HOA," and we heard that for the legislative staff, you all, you do Texas Realtor Day at the Capitol. You know how staff interacts with constituents. A lot of offices told us that HOA complaints are the number one call that they field.
Wow.
Like people just calling their state rep saying, "I can't figure this out and I need help." And the tough part is there's no entity in Texas that regulates homeowners associations. So a lot of times they just don't have an answer for them. So they were ready. They were ready to see some legislation go. And so that bill had a lot of things in it, and we would be here for the next 6 hours if I tried to tell you about it all. Amy mentioned some of the leasing requirements. There had already been a little bit of a chipping away at what property owners associations were able to collect when it came to leases. This legislation said no more. You can't require a copy of the lease, period, not even a redacted one. They are able to, of course, get contact information for the tenants, the term of not all the terms and conditions of the lease, but the length of the term of the lease. So they know who's occupying the property. And that's very reasonable especially for emergency purposes or other issues. But that's, since we're kind of thinking about property management, especially on this call, that's really the only space where that legislation touched on the leasing side. And I know that there's a lot of people out there who really want to have more conversations about what rights a property owners association should have versus what the property owner has, especially when it comes to being able to rent out your property, which we really consider to be one of the fundamental elements of private property rights. But the bill did a whole bunch of other things. It limited resale certificate fees, which I know is not anywhere close to the only fee involved in that a transaction in a property owners association. And we knew going into it that might create kind of a game of whack-a-mole, where if we limited this one, that other fees might go up over here. But again, it was a conversation starter, and we wanted to get the legislature thinking about the costs that. Sometimes those fees are very relevant and sometimes they are not. And so we needed to open to figuring out how we address that. And so we've got some great write-ups that people can look at about that legislation. So the last thing I will say is, since we're telling some stories here, and I know this is facing, and there's a lot of people who have varying opinions about homeowners associations' rights and powers out there in the world. So I think it's worth acknowledging that this legislation was not a slam dunk. It was actually a very challenging bill to move through the process. I think that if you look at the vote record, you might think that it was an easy slam dunk. It was not. Ultimately, it passed the House with only 2 no votes. And it passed the Senate ultimately with 3 no votes. Everybody else voted in favor of it. But that took an incredible amount of effort, not just on the staff side, but an extraordinary outreach from Texas Realtors and real property owners all over the state, giving feedback for months to the legislators. We did a call for action. Where we asked y'all to contact your legislators about this bill. We had over 13,000 realtors who responded to that and said, hey, we really want you to support this. We also built a public-facing website that's still up and running. If anybody wants to go to it and you haven't seen it, it's called myhoastory.com. And that's just out there in the world. And people could submit stories about what their experiences had been like living in an HOA or trying to buy or sell in an HOA. There is a shocking amount of information that people were willing to put out there. So when you go to that site, there's a tab right at the top that says read the stories, and it'll click to another thing that's just full of these boxes. And you can click on the boxes and they'll expand because sometimes people send in this much information, but you can read through that. And that was hugely impactful to the legislators. And, and lastly, I have to say that, if it weren't for the relationships that we're able to build via TreePack, via the outreach that we do through Nancy's entity when the legislators are not in session, there's a lot of doors that might have been closed there. So that could not have been more vital to success.
So one thing I'm going to say is go to myhoastory.com, pour yourself a glass of wine, maybe a box of chocolates for Valentine's Day, and just sit there because it's going to be some good stuff, guys. I remember the first time I moved into a rental home in a house in Wiley, and this was over a decade ago. And yes, I rented a property, and I get it. I'm a Texas realtor. At the same time, I had to live somewhere at that point. Julia too. But I remember getting there in the first week. I had like a sign in my yard or something in like a bush that somebody had given me. It was for my church. I was like, oh, okay, I'll put it in the yard. And they sent me a letter and was like, you can't have, any signage, blah, blah, blah. This can't be done. And I'm looking around and I'm like, but they're proud that their honor student plays the tuba and they're down there cool with that. And I'm like, what's wrong with my sign? Well, the funny part is that my next door neighbor had a literal used toilet on the curb for 3 weeks while I was living there because they were renovating the house. And I'm going, wait a second. So I can't have my sign, but they can have a dirty toilet on the curb next to my house. And so that's just a little teaser, guys. If you go to myhoastory.com, you might see some other interesting tidbits on that one. But I'm going to go back up for just a second because Johnny hit on a really great question. And I think he's really good at keeping us on task here, guys. Yeah. So, one of them was on Airbnb and short-term rentals. And, what is the state seeing from a policy, local rules in the horizon? Now, Julia just got to talk a lot. So I want Amy to talk for just a second. Are you seeing some of your clients, are they asking you to play in the short-term rental space? Is that something you do? And do you see anything prohibiting that?
That is not an area that we play in because it is a very specialized area and you really need to know what you're doing there. I have heard from those that specialize in it, it's quite lucrative. But a lot of the cities, Arlington's a big one, really cracking down on the Airbnbs. They are missing out on their hotel revenue. The neighbors are not real thrilled with, big groups coming in and having a party and renting the house out for the weekend. So I think we're going to see a lot more Airbnb regulations coming down. Most of our HOAs that we're dealing with have prohibitions against any leases less than 12 months.
Really?
So a lot of the HOAs have that. And I saw in the comments, somebody was asking about reading the HOA documents. Oh my goodness. If you want to be put to sleep, get you a resale package and read it. Some of these things, I've seen them 200, 300, 400 pages. And it's hard for the normal homeowner that doesn't deal in real estate every day to understand what all those parts and pieces are of the resale package. But What we're seeing a lot of is homeowners associations that have been in existence 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20 years. And people bought a house 10 years ago under one set of rules. And now the board and the group over time has set up a new amendment, new rules, new et cetera. And now they have rental prohibiting rentals or a rental cap or other regulations that they never even knew about. So a lot of these sellers are like, oh yeah, you could sell it to an investor, tell them to come on and buy it, and they can rent it out tomorrow. They don't even maybe know that the rules have been changed since they bought the house. So it's a huge issue. I think you're going to see a lot more of the Airbnb restrictions coming from the actual city or county level. Just like we saw with rental registration. Rental registration was this little bitty thing in one area, and now it has spread like wildfire throughout our DFW area. So, and that's a whole nother challenge to be able to navigate the rental registration process. So I think it'll come down to be something that they regulate eventually, like rental registration.
So Amy, and I'm going to give you a little plug right now, because I think Johnny even put this in one of the comments, using an actual property management specialist versus just throwing it out there on your own, whether you're a homeowner or maybe you're a realtor that doesn't do property management, but you have somebody ask you to do it. These nuances are becoming more and more prevalent, whereas maybe 10 years ago, we didn't have these things happening. But Amy, this is why you are a force to be reckoned with. You have a great reputation in our association and other associations because you are a consummate volunteer and a professional in your industry of the property management side. And that's really important. So if you're on here and dabble in rentals, maybe you shouldn't. And that's not to say that that's not something you can't learn about, or Amy would be a great resource to talk to, but really start thinking about the fact this is a huge impact. On people being able to sit there and have an actual asset and they need to rent it out, and being prohibited. What does that do? What does that do to the owner? What does that do to your business model? All of these other things. And Amy, you guys are obviously trying to stay up to date as much as possible to know. The one thing that you touched on that is really hard, especially in this marketplace, less than 12 months. That's not a short-term rental. We've got clients right now that were required to sell their homes to enter into a new construction contract or something else, and maybe need 8 months to finish the project, even though I'm working on like 17 months on two new construction projects. That is another show. But that's really hard, and people understand on face value. Maybe it sounds nice. I want to keep my my values of my home in good standing. So I don't want a rental product nearby. But until you actually need a rental yourself, there are so many other caveats to that. So Amy, thank you for continuing to stay up to date on those things and be a part of that. Another thing that Sherry had asked about was the moratorium on evictions renewed? And if not, have you seen an increase in evictions? And I think Amy froze. Of course, I did it. And we're almost there. Julia, how about you? Do you know if it was renewed?
The federal eviction moratorium has ended. Okay. There was an executive order in place, and then they used some interesting authority by the CDC to add another one. That one is also over. What I'll say is that there are some Texas counties and maybe even some cities that have some additional provisions that are supposed to be followed before an eviction can proceed. Things like a 60-day notice period or some provision for a right to cure before we can just move straight to evictions. But for the most part, the moratorium as a whole is gone.
Okay. That's great. Well, we lost Amy, which happens from time to time. And maybe this was just an intense one for her. And she decided to go to the bar. There she is. She's back. Not frozen. Okay.
You got to love the internet in the middle of a snowstorm.
I mean, truly. No,
I'm just happy we have electricity today,
Amen, sister. Well, Julia jumped in real quick to help answer, but from a local perspective. So somebody was asking, did the moratorium on evictions get renewed? And if it didn't locally, have you seen an increase in evictions?
We have seen a little bit of an increase in evictions. Part of the challenge that we have is every court does it differently. So we have courts that require a 30-day and a 3-day notice. We have courts that require the eviction diversion program. We have courts that required us to apply with Texas rent relief. I mean, the rules change almost day to day and court by court. It's incredible, the changes. I had another comment too about rental registration. When you're talking about hiring a property manager or having a owner do their own property management, something that came out with the Dallas County rental registration was that you must have an emergency contact that can be at the property within an hour. Well, that eliminates all out-of-state owners that were managing their own property in Dallas County. So huge impact by our counties there. And we've been working with the county, and we've made some changes and some updates, and they've been working with us on some of the changes. But there are probably owners that don't even know that that's in the regulation.
And I'm sure that's the case. And circling back to TreePack and why we do this, because again, having our Texas chair superstar for TreePack here as a member of MetroTex, and I know she's rolling her eyes going, I'm going to get you later. But Nancy, it would be a huge disservice if we didn't have you talk a little bit more about why, if you're not involved in TreePack, and that's not just as an investor, that's just somebody who's talking about these issues, why it's a major disservice to our community and our businesses by not doing so.
Well, I mean, like I said, we're homeowners, right? And we're also realtors. So it is critical to our business that we understand our business and we understand all the things that Amy and Julia have been talking about, and that we have some understanding of that. And so that's part of getting involved in your government affairs at your association or TreePack, because we really deal, I mean, we go into the issues. So that's part of what your job is as a realtor, is to understand everything. And then as a homeowner too, I mean, I want to know where my taxes are being paid. I want to know, can I rent my property out? It's my property. I should be able to do whatever I want with my property. And, I mean, and so some of these laws that are being changed, and they are so fluid. I mean, they change every day.
Yep.
So it's very hard to get a grasp on this stuff and educated, but it's, it's your livelihood. Your biggest investment is your home. Your job is your biggest, money maker. So it's really important. It's really important that we embrace it, because it just helps us all. And it helps us, better our communities. And, you understand it. You're TreePack chair for MetroTex. So, yay. So, I mean, we all get it. Yeah. So we all get it.
And I think that's the important part, is that people look at it as, oh, you're just fundraising, and oh gosh, you guys are giving money to the, certain candidate parties or anything else. And that's not what this is about. This is about identifying the property rights issues that plague our industry, protecting our industry. I'm pretty sure TreePack was the reason why we were deemed essential workers at the beginning of the pandemic. So for those of you that don't care about property management, poo-poo, do you still like to get in your car and do real estate? Because that's what TreePack did for us. And I think that just shows the influence and the ears that we have that listen to us. And we need to continue to get involved. And even if you don't want to get involved in the front lines, just know what's going on. Encourage other people to get involved, to listen, to read. And whether you're a property manager, whether you're a brand new agent, here's what I will also tell you. Some people will say, well, I don't have time. I don't have time to volunteer. I don't have time to be involved in TreePack. Just tell me what I need to do, whatever else. Do you know that since getting involved in TreePack, my business has grown probably by 50%. My clientele sees that I'm a consummate advocate and professional. They trust me to advocate on their behalf, not only in a deal, but afterwards. I let them know when the legislation is updated, how that could impact them, what they need to look at next. And that's a differential between myself and other realtors that aren't advocating. Even if you just want to do it from a self-serving aspect, you look pretty cool, and it's a good credential to put out there when you're talking to clients, especially investors who want to know, how are you going to help me make more money? Well, guess what? I invest in TreePack, and that's where I'm involved.
Well, and exactly, it's the biggest insurance policy bank that you can get for your business and, for your house. And, like I said, my clients become my friends. My kids are buying houses. It becomes a family thing. And, I want to have that investment for everyone. So it is a huge insurance policy for us all. And it just takes care of our business, our homes, and our community.
I need to get Real Talk swag, and then the first person that I'm going to send it to is going to be Johnny, because he always chimes in and he's always so involved. But Johnny is correct. TreePack isn't left or right. It's the realtor party, and that's why we call it the purple party and purple issues. Sherry Fearbacher is also a great cheerleader. She might be my mom and one of my biggest fans and my business partner, but she said, thank you, ladies, for stepping in with great information. Yes, this has been an interesting one tonight. We still have 10 minutes. We're not done, but I blame Russell Berry for anything because that's where I am. He was supposed to be here tonight, but you guys, again, on a snow day, where you could be doing other things or being in your pajamas in front of a fireplace, you are here with me right now, and you all said yes. And
it is business on the top and party on the bottom.
Yes,
I just have my flannel pajamas on the bottom, so let's just say that. But no, it's essential. It's essential for TreePack because we're all here advocating the same thing that we support. It's essential. And back to, COVID and back to when we were shut down. I mean, Governor Abbott called us. That's how much influence we have. And, I do a lot of deals across this, the country. And, a lot of my friends were calling from Michigan and, California and New York and saying, hey, baby, I'm not working and, not working for 3 months. And we were right back on, we didn't miss a beat. Mm-hmm. So again, that's the influence that we have with TreePack.
Well, Ashley, and go ahead,
I'd like
Amy.
to add that on the property tax front, that is going to impact all of the realtors in Texas. Every one of us are going to be impacted. I know that, for most of the people that are transferring here, they come from state income tax locations and they're coming to property tax location. They don't understand it. They don't understand where it comes from, how it gets calculated, how it fits into the whole process, whether it's investors or first-time homebuyers or transferees. The property tax thing impacts all of us. And so as realtors, when we're talking to our clients, they expect us to know this. They expect to know what's happening on the tax front when it comes to legislation that's changed. That's what's happening with the homestead exemptions. When can you file for your homestead exemption? All of that stuff, they expect us to know it. And I think that's really helped me in my business, is being able to get that information from TreePack on here's what the issues are and here's how they impact us, whether we're doing sales, rentals, commercial, whatever. We're all impacted by the legislature. All of us are impacted.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I appreciate that. And we're going to continue to talk for just a few minutes. But again, once a mom, always a mom. And at least Nancy, Nancy, I know you're a mom. Julia, are you a mom? Okay.
Only if you count the 4-legged
Oh,
creatures.
absolutely. But I was just doing that because I didn't want to offend, because I know Amy and Nancy can attest to this, but once a mom, always a mom. And just because this will also be viewed and watched after the fact, we've had some comments and some other things discussed tonight. And if you are watching and it's not live, Sherry did tee us up to put in the email that you can reach out to should you have any questions, and be able to reach out to the appropriate people with the appropriate information. And so, yes, our great wizard that makes us all look really nice and puts us in this Brady Bunch square, put in there registration at texasrealtors.com for more information on winter meetings. So appreciate that. And then, of course, Johnny, again, I'm going to have to start paying him, even though I'm not paid. I'll figure out ways to give him dividends of something. So that's the link to the portal that was also brought up in today's meeting. So ending on all things TreePack, public policy, and things real estate issued. I would like to give each and every one of you just a minute or two to kind of, whether it's a soapbox. Yes, I know, Johnny, but don't hold your breath because it's check's not in the mail. But I would like to give each one of you just a minute or two to kind of talk about what you think is the most pressing issue, whether it's Julia, from being an advocate for public policy for Texas Realtors, or Nancy being the TreePack chairman this year for the state and advocating on our behalf and getting that exposure. Amy, whether it is your volunteer work that you do with property management, TreePack, Women's Council, all the things, you're everywhere, or just a property management tidbit, we could just go along and no holds barred. So Julia, I'm going to give it to you first. Anything you want to leave our esteemed viewers with? Nothing's off the table.
Okay.
Or some things are off the table, but don't go there. So go ahead. Anyways.
I have a glass of red wine here, but I haven't had any yet. Okay. So I think I will remain measured and diplomatic. Okay. So I'm going to approach this quickly, but from a couple of different directions. Issues, if you're talking about core policy, I think, here is my prediction. I got out of the prediction game in 2016, but I'm going to get back in just for a second for y'all. I think that the legislature will really be interested in focusing on infrastructure matters in 2023. And that's, of course, critical to the business that y'all do. We can't sell houses if there's not a road of some kind to get there, probably. If the lights don't turn on when you come and check out that house, if the water doesn't come out of the faucet, all of that stuff really matters. It's not very sexy, and it's not very visible. So sometimes the public doesn't react that well to it because like you go and change the pipes out for, ones that are 150 years old and you put new stuff in it. People are just mostly pissed that you disrupted traffic for a while, but that's the stuff we have to do to make sure that we can, that our bridges aren't falling down and things like that. So if I am thinking that that's where the legislature is going to go or spend a lot of their time in 2023. So we'll pay attention to that. I want to, from where I sit as a staff person, I have never been a realtor. I have spent my entire career on the public policy advocacy side for realtors since I was a lot younger than I am now. I have worked for 6 realtor associations in 3 states. And I will say that I have never seen someone who got involved in government affairs at their local or state or even the national association who has ever failed out of this business. And so I just cannot encourage people enough to get involved in TreePack, get involved in your local GA committee, whatever it is. And, lastly, I'll say the critical issue that is not going to be a bill at the legislature, but for us to think about is Texas Realtors has an extraordinary participation rate, not just in TreePack, but showing up at the Texas Capitol, responding to those calls for action. Again, I've worked in other states and I love y'all, but Texas is well above average when it comes to those things. And it is the number one thing that makes us powerful at the Capitol. So don't let up. Keep showing up. Keep reading your emails. Keep responding. Keep retweeting whatever it is you do. And that is the surefire way that Texas Realtors will continue to be successful in the public policy and political space. And thank you for having me.
Julia, you have earned your wine. So we appreciate it. And that just means, guys, get involved, because that's why I got involved. When I heard, because I'm also going to plug the leadership program, TRLP, and applications are open until February 11th. But when I did my overnight in that program to the Texas Capitol, and I heard how powerful and how much influence we had from a trade association, from people that were just filling our cup. These were legislators. These were different people who said, when Texas Realtors talks, we listen. And I said, well, gosh, if it is that impactful, I have to get more involved. And so for me, that was what was so important. Yes, thank you again for putting in that link. You have till February 11th. And if you need a letter of recommendation and this show inspired you, feel free to reach out, even if I don't know you, and I'll write you one just because you tuned into the show. So Nancy, real quick, and we might be a couple minutes over 6:30, but that's okay. Cute puppy in the background, by the way. And I know that's what you've been rubbing for a while.
Yes, I'm trying to keep him silent. Yeah, sorry about that, guys.
No, you're good.
I'll keep it very short. Invest, act, and vote. And early voting is February 14th. Please go out and vote. We also, Texas Realtors has an amazing website to go and check on your party preference. It has everything about your supported candidates, in-depth information. So it is TexasRealtorsSupport.com. Go there. You can put in your address and find out who your representatives are and our position on that. So it's a rock solid way to start. Yes, invest, act, and vote.
Again, there's that link. We've got TexasRealtorsSupport.com. And it is a great way to see why. And when we're looking at these officials, whether they're incumbents or people that are running against the incumbents or anything else like that, it's based on realtor party issues, things that impact the things that we talked about today. Rental registration, HOA policies, tax reform, all of these other things that are real estate oriented, that change the ability to have the full authority to use your property as you see fit. That's what this is about. This isn't about party lines. Again, we're the purple party, but this is a great tool for you to get more informed and understand when you are in that voting booth. If there are not names or races that you're familiar with and you say, you know what, I'm here to support the realtor initiatives, then download that, look at it. And I think it's okay to take it with you potentially, maybe. And what can you take a sheet or anything I know different things have changed. Okay. I don't know. Don't go on that. Don't take paper into the voting box and then you get in trouble and then you come after me. But just research it and read it and see what we can do there. So Amy, what about you?
My 2 cents would be, if you see something, say something. We can't be everywhere, but with 150,000 realtors in the state of Texas, if you are having a problem in Midland or Amarillo, Lubbock, wherever you are, if you don't say something, then we can't put it on the list of things to watch. And the local level, it starts there. Grassroots is where it starts. And that's where rental registration got crazy and got out of hand in some cases. The HOAs have gotten a little nutty with some of the stuff that they've come across with. So I would say reach out to your association. There's going to be a governmental affairs person there, and you can say, hey, this just happened on this transaction. Did y'all know they're doing this? And maybe they do, and maybe they don't. But we all got to work together. We're all on one team.
Yep.
Amy, I love that unified speech. I was just told I was incredibly wrong. No sheets, no screens. So that's your disclaimer there, but still a great tool to go on and take a look at what the Texas Realtor support at TexasRealtorSupport.com. And then my last little sign-off moment is going to be get involved. And that doesn't mean just in TreePack. That means get involved with what we do. There's a lot of people that have a different idea for homeownership and impacting our business and advocating on behalf of individual property owners' rights. So that doesn't mean maybe TreePack isn't where you feel like your voice is going to be best suited, but there are tons of committees. There are tons of different organizations that you can get involved in, and that's really where it's at. We're all realtors or in the realtor organization, as Julia is, but volunteerism and giving back to this organization is the only way we're going to continue to thrive and be able to be essential and to be able to protect individual property owners' rights. So get involved, invest, act, and then most importantly, go vote, because you don't get to have an opinion and bitch about it. I said it. bitch about it if you don't go and actually make your voice heard by voting. So February 14th is early voting. Nancy, what is the actual voting day?
Is it March 2nd? March 1st. March 1st.
March 1st. Julia coming in with the clutch. March 1st, guys. So February 14th to March 1st, you've got time to vote. Go out there and yes, Valentine's Day. Do something special. Love on yourself by going to vote. So thank you for joining us. We appreciate you guys. Go cuddle up by the fireplace. Enjoy your evening and your red wine or your vodka, whatever your guilty pleasure is. And we will see you next time on Real Talk, where we put the real in real estate. Thank you, ladies.